Paul takes a drink like 70% of the time right before we start, which is normal. I mean, I do it as well because we're about to talk. But one of these times, I'm just going to interrupt that intro and cut to you.
Oh, every time I do this, I am waiting for you to do just that. I know you well enough by this point to know that you are planning just that.
I am not above the cheap laugh. That is
the spit take.
Yeah.
Cheap laugh. Sure.
So I don't know what happened last night, but this was wonderful in our house. Like I went to bed and I slept the whole night, and so did my wife, and so did the kid, and so did the dog. And I woke up this morning and I was like in such a good mood, and my wife was too, and like we're all just cheering, like dancing around the house. It's just been a good day. Like this is good.
I gotta go. I can't.
This is
not my experience. It's not even in the same planet as my experience.
I mean, it could be worse or whatever.
Yeah, it could be me.
Yeah.
That's how it could be worse.
Well, let me put it this way. If I ever wake up in my bed and you're next to me, we're both going to have a bad morning.
Right. It'll be like the final season of the Newhart show where he wakes up next to his old wife from the previous show. Never mind.
Yeah. So, Paul, because I'm not going to hardwire my house, I figured I might as well change something else up. So, okay. I think this is legitimate, maybe. So I have a lot of IoT crap in my house, a lot of it, a lot of it. And so I've avoided Apple's automation HomeKit app for the entire of its existence for certain reasons. One, I didn't want to be locked into them and whatever and whatnot.
Yep. Is it called Home? Is that just
it's just called Home? I think it's just called Home. Yeah. It's the little, it's the yellow one.
Little house.
Whatever. Yeah.
Can't really see it, but yeah, it's a little yellow house.
It's cute. And Nest, which I use a lot of, is a little blue house. So I got, two little bird homes living on my front porch here. It's great because these two companies are pointing guns at each other and refuse to cooperate over the Cold War of IoT.
Sure.
But anyway, so there's some other apps that I use that I can get rid of. And I can combine them all into the Home app.
If you use the Home app, yeah. Okay.
And so I've been trying to move my life into that app because the one nice thing that Apple has done here is that I can set this whole app up on my phone, then add my wife, and then hers is just working because this is the point of contention. Is that
in other words, she doesn't have to do any setup; she'll just see it because you've done it and you're on the same iTunes account or whatever it might be.
And so this is what I've been told. I cannot verify this yet, but I can see how I can add her, and then it will replicate the screen over to her, and then she can control all the crap in the house without having to ask me.
I also don't use the app, obviously. I will say this: it's a nice app. Actually, it's got a pretty good UI.
Yeah. So far, I've moved everything out of the Hue app. That was step one.
Yep.
I've got some outlets or switches that I can put in there that is step two. Here's the.
Sorry to interrupt, but as far as the Hue stuff goes, do you find that it provides the same level of, I want different colored lights and different scenes? It does do all that?
So yes, it does. An important thing that it does that it had to do no matter what, which it does, is it has to be able to set timers. I have to be able to say lights come on at whatever and lights turn off because that is the basic function that I need to spend for my $20 light bulbs. Each one has to turn on at the right time to light up the house. So yes, it does. I will say though, it does possibly require a few more taps. Like I'm not going to delete the Hue app from my phone, but I'm just going to
hide it and
bury it.
Yeah.
And you can change all the colors.
Because you never know.
Yeah, you can change. You could do just about everything. But because Home is like an all-encompassing app, it might be buried a little bit deeper than just inside the Hue app, which is fine. So then, Paul, the $69.99 question becomes, and I picked that number out of the air, I promise.
Yeah, not randomly.
Randomly pick $69.99 out of the air, is I can connect my garage door to HomeKit.
Yes, and then have those be part of the same scene or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, for a very low price of $69.
Now, why? What's that number related to?
That's how much it costs to do this.
No, but what are you buying? Like, what's the thing?
It's basically a hub that plugs in and connects.
What's the name of it?
Chamberlain Bridge or something.
Oh, and is this related to your garage somehow?
It's specific to the garage door that I bought.
That's the thing. And actually, the reason I asked you how it worked is because I've looked at this with the Google version of this, and it's fairly unsophisticated. It doesn't have all the stuff the Hue app has, but it does the basics and whatever. But Of course, the advantage is what you're describing. You could, and that's the beauty of this. Like you could buy 10 more smart lights from a different company, right? Now, if you did that with the native apps, you'd have to control them in two different places, and it's kind of goofy. But when you do it through some kind of a hub, whatever it might be, and there are third-party hubs too, you can combine them into a thing. And obviously, I think Google's going to get it there. Apple, I think, probably is there. I just don't spend any time in the app. But yeah, that's the beauty of this, and that's the thing I was talking about. I think, well, probably before Christmas, obviously, this notion of you could say, "Hey, G, Merry Christmas," and lights would change to red and green, music would come on the Chromecast, whatever the sequence of things are, and they're all from unrelated companies, but all working in concert as part of a script or whatever the name is for that thing in Apple.
Unless they're Nest. Unless there's Google's company, which the problem is that I'm not going to replace that stuff in my house because one, it works, as annoying as it is, because it doesn't interact. That stuff works pretty damn well. When I set up the cameras, all you do is you plug it in, you scan the code, and within 5 seconds, you have live video on your phone. I mean,
that doesn't surprise me. Google does a good job with hardware setup. Like the Google Wi-Fi stuff does that. It's really seamless, and it really steps you through it. And if you have multiple routers or whatever, Wi-Fi points, as you would, right? So most people probably have like 2 or more. It steps you through the process of adding them on as you go, and it's really nice. So that doesn't surprise me. That's one thing they get right.
So I'm hoping that maybe one day they will eventually, because there was a post in the Nest forums by Nest people saying, "Look, we have Nest Connect or whatever it's called, and Apple can use it anytime they want." Yeah,
it would be better if Nest used Apple, so to speak. And honestly, I don't understand why they wouldn't.
But I think I'm okay with the two worlds being like my lights and my plugs and everything else being in the Home app, Apple's app, and my furnace and my security cameras and my smoke detectors all being in the Nest. I mean, I have to be okay with it. Otherwise, I'm like thousands of dollars down into somebody else's pocket to get everything into a single app, which is not going to happen.
Yeah. So, and we thought that the ambient computing future was going to be a lot simpler than the stuff we did before.
Yeah. Whoever could have predicted this?
Well, it makes it hard. Like, think about from the process of writing a book, like you would say, in the past you'd be like, here's everything you need to know about Windows 8, or, here's everything you need to know about the Mac, if you want to write a book about the smart home, like Smart Home Basics, something like that. I mean, you have to account for at least 2 of the digital assistants, probably more, honestly, if you want to be complete. And then the multitude of ways in which you can go to do what you're talking about, like using a hub app of some kind, or a physical hub even, whatever it might be, to connect different ecosystems to do a thing. Or you just have to make a decision like, look, I'm only going to cover this one. So if you want to come on this ride, you have to buy everything that I bought. We're in kind of it's the early days, right? And I think that's what this reflects. It can be a little complex.
Yeah. And I think going forward, my 2 requirements are going to be obviously, because there's things that work outside of these 2 apps, like you can go Smart Things and other stuff, or Z-Wave and all that other crap. Is that it's going to have to either be HomeKit or Nest compatible. For a while, I was using Amazon as kind of like the central thing, but by doing this, I'm actually switching it over to my Apple TV, which I did it for a couple reasons. One, I tend to trust Apple a little bit more than, say, maybe an Amazon with this stuff.
I think they're both trustworthy, but I don't dispute the decision for sure.
Yeah. Plus, I've got the phone, I've got the stuff, and the hardware is actually in my house. So in theory, you could, if you had an issue, I could go run over to that box, unplug it, and life would seemingly disconnect somehow or something. Yeah. But so we'll see how much more. Then I was starting to look at like, man, I could replace all my switches in my house with HomeKit connected stuff.
Listen, buddy.
Yeah, I know.
I don't.
The big one, the big one here is, and I'm sure I've shared this on here. Whatever. In all of our bedrooms, we have 2 switches. One's for the light and one's for the fan. And it's like in one box, if that makes sense. I think for one gauge or whatever they call it. And so what's the trick is I need a smart switch that has 2 switches in the like one box, because it's not like side by side. It's a small switch on the top and a small switch on the bottom. One does light, one does fan. And if I could reasonably replace all those with ones that connected to the phone, that would actually be potentially worthwhile, because then my lazy butt could lay in bed and turn the fan on and not have to get up.
Your desire to be like a Roman god is completely understandable. But you are talking about a lot of expense and complexity to make that happen.
Oh, and a lot of headache, and a lot of my wife being mad about taking perfectly working apparatus
Right.
and making it
Right.
a non-working apparatus, or
Yeah,
tethered
my
to the
wife would
Wi-Fi. And
have the same. Yep. That's a normal concern. I mean, I'm still dealing with, we talked about my drama with the lights on the garage, right? And just to kind of recap the central issue, 3 of the 4 lights that are out there are completely updated to the latest software version, which is the software version that enables you to determine a power on behavior where it could go back to the light color it was before, which is awesome, right? The 4th one will not upgrade to that version. It's not that it fails; it never even sees it like it does.
Yeah.
It is up to date to it, so they're incompatible, right? There's 3 that are fine. There's 1 that is not. And now that the holidays are over, we've been pretty much just leaving the lights alone as whatever the normal kind of whitish color is, and they're nice and bright actually, which is great for the garage. But like you, I like to screw around and I do frig with the colors and everything. And we have like sets of color in the house. And so our living room, which includes the backlighting on the TV, but also a lamp, we have like kind of a scene going on in there. And the sunroom, where we'll sit there and listen to music, or when people are over, whatever, has changed from the holiday colors, right, to this some kind of a tropical thing or whatever it is. It's kind of like purples and yellows or whatever. And it's nice using those little bloom things that are in the corner. So this is not completely scientific. I'm not exactly positive of this, but twice now we've had a situation where the lights in the living room and the lights in the sunroom have reverted to that Christmas scheme, which is green and red at the same time. Like we're watching TV and all of a sudden the lights change to green and red. And then you look out in the sunroom and they too have changed back to green and red. Also, the brightness has gone down to like 50%. I'm not really sure about that one, but anyway, it's happened twice. And the thing that's common to both times that this happened is, for some reason, I had decided to open up the Hue app and change the lights outside to a color scheme, or to a scene, as Hue calls it. And because I've been doing what I do for so long. I mean, of course, the first thing that goes through my mind is, it's that freaking bulb. It's the bulb that's off. That's not working quite right. There's something about it that it's not letting everything else work. So I'm probably going to swap it out for another one. But there are at least 3 other Hue lights in the house. I haven't discussed it, including one that's just up in a bedroom now that nobody uses. So I think I'm going to just reverse them, because that one upstairs, which is doing nothing, is upgraded to the newest version and probably will work fine. But then I have to rename them, and I got to put them in different rooms, and
Yada yada yada. Yeah.
That's what this is. I have one light that doesn't quite work right. Actually, it works fine normally, but I think now it's causing this problem, and that's what I have to do. Like, it's a mess to fix it. So you just described swapping out your switches for smart switches. You can kiss away the next year of your life.
Sounds like fun.
Mm-hmm.
I told this Paul privately, I think. One of my outlets for the back. Do we do this on the podcast? I don't even know.
I don't.
Whatever. So one of the outlets in the back of my house wasn't working, so I took it apart, and I needed to see if there's current in the wire. And so I went to the local hardware store and bought a $14 thing. You touch it on the wire, and it tells you if there's current in it. I'm like, great. So I took the outlet apart, touched the wire. There's current in the wire. This is great. So that just means the outlet is dead, or the screw or whatever. So as I'm screwing with this thing and replacing it, I shocked the shit out of myself and realized, one, there's current in the wire, and 2, I wasted $14. I went to figure out there's current when I could have just grabbed it, because I ended up doing that. As it turns out,
there are 2 ways to discover if there's current going through the wire. Yeah, you did tell me this story. I don't remember if it was private or public. These things
can't ever remember.
Blend together for me now. I don't.
But speaking of things that are also blending together, 7 straight years for PC sales declines. Not all that unsurprising. What I was curious is when the smartphones will start following this trend. I wonder if this will be the first year.
Yeah, I think it's actually
2019,
started.
meaning,
Yeah. Well, it kind of has. I mean, they've kind of leveled off, if you look at the chart that I have for the PC sales, it actually falls off a cliff at first, and then it starts to calm down. And here's the good news. If you look at the upward size of the chart, I think it goes back to 2006. 2011 was the high point for the industry. Off the top of my head, it was 365, maybe 360, something like that. 365 million PCs were sold that year. 30% more than were sold this past year. So that's how far the market has fallen since then. In the climb to that number, there were 2 years in a row, it doesn't matter which two, where the growth was actually very slow. Not quite flat, but it was very slow, whereas the other ones were actually kind of big steps up. In the years since 2011, it has been a steady step down, like a really kind of a big chunk each year, except for the last 3 years. I don't remember the number for 2 years ago, but 1 year previous to last year, the sales shortfall year over year was only 1.5%. This year it was just under 1%. I mean, that's not bad at all.
Yeah.
The numbers aren't great, frankly. I mean, there were at least 2 quarters where sales were essentially flat. There was 1 quarter where it was like a tiny 1 point something percent up. And this last quarter was actually kind of a disaster comparatively. It was 4% down year over year. But when you look at the 3 years in the chart, you can kind of see how it is a leveling off,
Yeah.
And I think that's the path for a little down, a little up, a little down, a little up, that kind of thing. Even if it went down a little bit every single year, like 1%, I mean, we could do that forever and not really notice.
Kind of see it back here.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. So, so there was that. Okay. Maybe I'm sorry. I have the numbers reversed or the things reversed, but there was a 2-year period earlier in the downfall part where it leveled off. And if someone thought in the second year, well, maybe we're okay, the next year it fell off a cliff again. We now have 3 years in a row where it actually kind of leveled off. So I think this is how it goes. I think this is where it's at. And you mentioned smartphones. I think that's where smartphones are at too. I think it's already happened. And this is you see this in many, many ways. This came up in Ask Paul today, which I haven't published yet, but with regards to ambient computing. But when you go from computer, like personal computing platform generations, like PC to phone to this ambient computing thing, what you see is an acceleration of everything, right? The sales spike is faster. The adoption broadly is faster. And then on the downside, the falling off is also faster. And I think I think the smartphone market is already reflecting it. I think the last 2 years have shown the direction we're heading in. It's going down. Yeah.
And for those who couldn't see, I believe it's about 260 million laptops were sold, or PCs were sold last year.
Yeah.
Does that sound about right?
I think so. Yeah. It's on the chart, but I can't. Your head's in the way.
Yeah, 259 million. Well, I was looking for the tab, and I was like, where did it go? And
that's right. Because last year it was 261.
Yeah.
So this year it's 259. These are numbers that were averaged over Gartner and IDC. So just so we're clear on where those are from. But that's very close. It's very close.
And that's not an insignificant sum of machines either.
Right.
Obviously, if you're making your bread and butter, selling laptops and whatnot, it's a little alarming. But 259 million every year, it's still not.
It's still an important market, and I would argue, beyond the sheer numbers. I mean, the install base we know 1.5 billion on PCs is a significant size, and also that these devices are important. Smartphones are obviously important. A lot of what people do on smartphones aren't necessarily important, but I think the one thing that's really cool about the PC is that virtually, with the exception of old people who typically who might do some what I would call non-standard tasks now, like Facebook or watching Netflix or something. Most people use computers these days for productivity tasks, and that's nothing to be ashamed of. It's like they're used for work, like they're critical.
Yeah. And speaking of things that are critical, I think if the Wall Street Journal is correct, I believe it's fair to say that Apple has run out of ideas because, according to them, their next flagship is going to have not 1, not 2, but 3 cameras on the back of the device, which every time I hear that, I have to think that the people in Mountain View just start laughing because Google clearly takes better images with one sensor, and everyone else just keeps throwing more in there because they don't know how to make it better.
They don't have the AI competency or whatever. But you know what? That's starting to change. And the interesting thing about this is the camera I'm testing right now has 3 cameras, as you can see. This is a Huawei Mate 20 Pro. this phone is actually really impressive. You know, like one of the interesting things for me was when going through all that smartphone buying and returning last year is I discovered that the phone on my Pixel 2 XL is fantastic and it takes better pictures basically than everything I had just bought. And, you know, therefore I didn't have to spend $1,000 to have a better experience this year.
Mm-hmm.
And then this thing came around. And I got to tell you, if you haven't looked at my last 4 or 5 Instagram photos, they were all taken with this phone. You can tell they're super deep, rich, detailed. Like I took some pictures out in the kitchen and I was like, I actually brought my wife down. I'm like, you got to look at this, you know?
Yeah.
And I said, there's something going on with this camera. Like, this is amazing. And it does this auto sensing thing. Like if you get up close to something, it switches into a macro mode. If, you know, it does that kind of thing. And we were going to go out last night to eat. And so I said, I'm going to take pictures of the food. And I don't normally put them on Instagram because I do get the kind of stupid ass comments like I did get. Oh, I thought you were a keto diet. Anyway, the pictures are unbelievable. Oh, there are other people there, idiots. I'm taking pictures of other people's food too, by the way. Anyway, the point is the photos I took are incredible. And what they look like to me is a set of photos that were taken on like a DSLR or something, or perhaps, I don't know, edited by a Photoshop expert to make them look like super contrasty and awesome. Like this is nuts. And so if that's what Apple's doing, if the next iPhones, like they can do this, I would say add cameras all over the back of that thing if you got it, because like that's amazing. Like I mean, and it's still early days with the photos. I've actually been using this for a couple of weeks, but I haven't really taken too many photos with it until the past couple of days. And then all of a sudden I realized like this thing is like, this is the first time I've ever picked up a camera. I'm like, this is absolutely better than the Pixel. Like I have never had that experience, and it's incredible.
Yeah. The question becomes is what is the upper bound on good cameras, right? At some point it's just like, okay, we know everything is great. Some things are slightly better than, I mean, you're basically going from a Porsche to a Ferrari or whatever.
No, that's fair. I mean, I think I remember the year accurately. In 2013, Nokia had that event in New York City where they announced the 1020.
Yep.
And I was so blown away by this that I said, I'm going to take this thing with me on my home swap. I'm going to bring my normal camera, but I'm not going to take it out unless things go south. I'm going to actually take all my home swap, vacation photos with this phone. And I have never not done that since then, right? That trip showed me that phones had gotten to the point where you could replace a point and click camera, not a professional camera, obviously.
Yeah.
And there are problems. There's optical zoom issues, and there are things you don't get. There are add-on lenses. There's all this baloney you can do. But, to have a thing in your pocket that takes astonishing photos where you're just out in the world and it's no big deal. It's just a snapshot, but it comes out awesome, is incredible. And then to go on a vacation and take meaningful photos and have them be incredible.
Yeah.
Is incredible. So, yeah, you're right. But like I said, I mean, through the Nexus 6P to the first Pixel to the second Pixel and to the third Pixel, which I ended up returning, to me, there was like an obvious, like those were all awesome. They're just small percentages better than each other, but they are still better than I think all the other cameras that are out there. But I can't say that anymore. So the reason this is exciting is because it's been the same for a while. Mm-hmm. Apple added 2x optical zoom, I think, with the iPhone 7 Plus, and they've never improved on that. That confuses me. I think optical zoom is one potential future that is going to have meaningful change, because the point and click that I gave up, whatever it was, a Canon something, was basically a spy camera. It had like 28x optical zoom, I think, or 25. And it was the type of thing where you could be at like the top of like the Eiffel Tower or something, and you could take pictures of people on the ground. And it was like those satellite pictures from movies where they can read the license plate number. Like, it was actually kind of creepy, like crazy good. Like, and this is just like a point and click camera. I mean, the lens would come out like, 4 inches or something, but yeah, it was pretty amazing. So I do think that's one area. But yeah, when you look at all the capabilities, these night modes and the slow-mo modes and portrait modes, and I mean, yeah, basically it's now up to everyone just to catch up.
Yeah. And
then you can use whatever phone you want.
Yep. We will see.
Amazing.
We will see what the year ahead brings. Obviously, we all know it's going to be good cameras.
Yeah.
But it's kind of hard to imagine. I know where there's the whole, what do they call it? The whole punch screen now, instead of a notch. And that's going to be a nice trend, but we'll see if there's anybody else has something up
The
their
hole
sleeve.
punch is like the mote in God's eye. We'll see how those are in real life. But Samsung, I'd like to see them improve the camera quality. It's already very good. Apple, already very good. I'm interested to see what they do. Obviously, Google's going to have to go multi-camera multi-lens, right? I mean, they have done. It's astonishing what they've done, and this is now 4 generations in a row. Single lens, just deep HDR, very detailed, not very noisy, incredible night stuff. One lens, like it's crazy. I keep waiting for that to end. It's going to have to end.
I'm going to be curious to see. Well, first they need to build a phone that's all screen, and not this bathtub notch thing that they've got.
And build a
right
phone
now.
that I can actually buy because it's reliable. That would be nice.
Stepping stones, right? Stepping stones.
Well, I show the, like I said, I showed this thing to my wife, and I'm like, I might have to buy this thing. She's like, isn't this a Chinese company? And I'm like, yeah. She's like, do they even sell this in the United States? I'm like, no, not technically, but.
Well, they didn't sell Alfa Romeos in the U.S. for a long time either.
Yeah, and you don't really see Alfa Romeos on the street for that reason.
Well, they're back. You can buy.
Right.
Yeah, the Julia, I believe it's called, is now.
Yeah, if you were tired of not having that level of unreliability, Alfa's back, baby.
Well, considering I want to rewire my house with HomeKit switches, an Alfa Romeo might be right up my alley.
That's right. Right.
All right. You got anything else for today, Mr. Paul?
Just real quick, we're halfway through the Surface Go Surface headphones giveaway. It looks like we have thousands of responses, so that's going to be an awesome day for me tomorrow. Tim, when Tim got up this morning, he pinged both of us. So you probably saw this, but he, just for the benefit of other people, he said that there are a bunch of people complaining that their entries are disappearing. It's interesting to me that people have entered the contest and then gone back later to check if their entry was still there, but. Many people have done that because they've emailed me as well. One of the many mistakes I've made with this was A, doing this, but B, like doing it twice with the software codes and then doing it exactly the same way for this thing, knowing full well that this problem exists. So if you entered and you're worried about that kind of stuff, I'm going to go through what it is a spam filter. And as Tim said to me and to you, actually, this the thing I asked people to write and then is bulk written all over the comments looks like spam to the spam filters.
Yes, because they're.
Of course it does.
I'm looking at it right now. Well, I woke up this morning and I saw the thread and I went and approved a bunch of them. No joke, there were about 900. But when you look at it, it's just Surface Go 700 times. And it's if you're AI and you see Surface Go coming in at whatever 1 post per second, you're like, that might be spam.
All of a sudden, no one's going to be able to comment about Surface Go on any blog because this engine is like we're seeing a surge in Surface Go interest. I just know that I thank you for doing what you did, by the way. I will also do the same, and I'll make sure everyone gets in. So please don't repost. That will not help. But your vote will be registered. So I will never do this again.
Extra info. If you do try to post and it says this has already been submitted, that actually means it's been flagged as spam and it will show up before we close the polls or whatever.
Yeah. That's right. Right.
So
yeah. Yep.
All right. You good?
No, but I'm done.
All right. Fantastic.
How about you, Brad? What else is going on for you?
Well, we're supposed to get between 4 to 6 inches of snow tomorrow. I will report happily on Monday if that's going to happen. My daughter is through the moon, through the roof, I should say, and I'm kind of excited. We haven't gotten any snow. I'll be asking me on Tuesday how excited I am about it, but
I don't want snow. I'm done. Yeah. After last year, I need no snow. That's my goal for this year.
All right, folks, well, that wraps it up for today. We got snow inbound. We've got giveaways outbound. We've got all sorts of stuff. But hopefully you had a wonderful week, and we'll catch you right back here next time on Monday, and enjoy the weekend.